All right, let's get right to part 3 of my interview with Donald Trump. There's 2 issues we're going to talk about. One is what I think the Democrats are going to run on, and one, I think, are what the issues you will be running on. Democrats, democracy in peril, January 6th, abortion, 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 all of these issues. And then, of course, we have this, with 153 days out of the election yesterday, Joe Biden, who'd been telling America that the border's closed and the border's secure for over 3 years, and his vice president said it, and his spokespeople had said it, and his Department of Homeland Security secretary said it. Then, all of a sudden, they wanted to blame Republicans. I don't have the power. Meanwhile, they did undo all of your policies with the stroke of a pen. Now, finally, yesterday, he implemented a new policy. However, it's
meaningless.
2 million illegals a year.
Millions of people are allowed to come in. It's meaningless. It's a joke. Everybody knows it. It has nothing to do with border security. And he didn't need anything from Congress. All he has to do is shut the border. You say, shut the border, sign an order, and the border will close. I did it. We had the best border, the safest border in history. But your question is a large question because you're asking about a lot of things. Take abortion. For 52 years, people wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And the people that wanted to do it were legal scholars, lawyers, politicians. Everybody wanted it to go back into the state system, not the federal system.
Let the states decide.
Let the states decide. The people decide. Let the states decide. For 52 years, they fought it. I was able to get it done with the appointment of great justices, 3 great justices, plus others that joined them, as you know. And we don't have to go into all the names, but they're great. And they had the courage to end Roe v. Wade, which really meant, from a legal standpoint, it now goes back to the states. And now the states are deciding. And by the way, in many cases, like Ohio, it became, if you want to use the word liberal or progressive, it was more liberal or progressive than people would have thought. But the people of Ohio decided. The people of Kansas decided. The people are now deciding. And it's taken it off the shoulders of the federal government. Always they wanted it to be decided by the states. And Roe v. Wade didn't do that. It put it into the federal government. So now states are voting on it. And in many cases, it's more progressive, or I like the term liberal. You know, they want to get away from the word liberal, I guess. But it's more liberal in many cases, not in all cases. In some cases, they're going the other direction. But the people are deciding. And in many ways, it's a beautiful thing to watch. So they wanted to, for 52 years, move it back to the states. That's why they wanted to fight Roe v. Wade. Then about 10 or 12 years ago, it started getting more complex. They were talking about lots of different things. But remember this. The radicals, in many ways, are the Democrats on this issue because they want to have abortion be okay in the 8th month and the 9th month and even after birth.
You're talking about, by the way, when you say that, you're talking about former Governor Northam, who said the baby will be born, and in that case, the baby will be born, the baby will be made comfortable, then the doctor and the baby will talk about it. I had Gavin Newsom debating Ron DeSantis on this very show.
Right, I watched.
And it took a long time to get Gavin to answer, will you support any restrictions in months 7, 8, or 9? And he, at one point, got annoyed because I kept going in for an answer. And the answer came back. He goes, that is a decision between a doctor and a patient and their conscience. That's it. That means, to me, no restrictions. I think the country probably is around where Dobbs is, but the states will decide it, as you point out, because I do think it hurt the Republicans in 22.
It did. But I think the Republicans didn't know how to talk about the issue. And when it came to things having to do with abortion, instead of saying the states will decide, the states will decide, it really hurt the Republicans. They didn't know how to talk about the issue. And now I think they're learning how to talk about it. And all they're going to do is say, and they can campaign one way or the other within the state. The states are all deciding right now. And I think it's working the way that people wanted it to work. And it's going to bring the country together on an issue that was very, very bad. But you mentioned about Gavin, I call him Gavin Newsom. because he's done a terrible job as
friend of
governor.
yours?
Yeah, another name.
By the way, $70 billion budget deficit.
No, he's done a terrible job in California. One of the most beautiful places environmentally, from a weather standpoint, the ocean, the whole thing. I have things in California, it's so beautiful, but the regulation in California is just incredible what they've done to that state. I mean, it's just horrible. And now people are moving out as opposed to moving in. That never happened there. But you know, when you talk about the abortion, because it's an important thing to talk about, and a lot of people are afraid to talk about it, and a lot of politicians are destroyed talking about it, but like the exceptions, I like the 3 exceptions, and you have the 3 exceptions.
Rape, incest, mother's life.
Correct, and you have the 3 exceptions. And I think people, they have to follow their heart. They have to, you know, do what's right before their God, if they're religious people, but they have to follow their heart. And I happen to believe, like Ronald Reagan was very strong on the 3 exceptions. And I think you should do that. At the same time, you have to follow your heart. But what's happening is everybody agrees pretty much that in the 8th, 9th, and beyond, I mean, beyond is really an execution. We're not even talking about the word abortion. We're talking about an execution. And the former governor, not the current governor, who's doing a very good job, by the way. He's doing a very Youngkin, doing a very good job. But the former governor before him said, you lay the baby down and you decide with the mother what to do. The baby's born. That's an execution. I think everybody knows that in the 8th month and the 9th month and beyond that, I mean, hard to believe, they have some states passing legislation where you can execute the baby after birth. It's crazy. It's like so many other things. Open borders, crazy. Men playing in women's sports, crazy. So I think the Republican Party has done an amazing job in certain ways, but they've never understood how to talk about, and I agree with you, it's hurt the Republican Party. It's hurt some people. Exceptions is very important. I believe that. But what we did is we took Roe v. Wade out of the federal government, put it in the states, and now the people are deciding. And in some cases, not everybody's happy, but the people are deciding. And I say, let the states decide. This is, every legal scholar wanted this to be where abortion should be. And you know, I've been following the issue very closely, but over the years I've followed it less closely. But I always noticed that they always wanted to move it back to the states. Everybody. And I was able to do that. And it's all happening, and it's happening correctly. And I wish that Republicans could talk about it correctly. And if they would, you'd see it's a very different issue. And remember, they're not really the radical ones. The radical ones are the ones that
no restrictions.
9th month, after birth, you can execute the baby. Those are the radicals, and those are the liberals and the progressives, and nobody wants to see that.
Up next, I asked President Trump about Biden's obvious cognitive decline. Straight ahead. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.